Hello and welcome everybody to our latest edition of What's New on Spouse Nation. Spouse Nation is the program of military spouse jobs. And today I am excited to be here with not just my partner in crime, who is Melinda Rao, but also Kelly Hogan, who works over on the National Guard Employment Network side. And she is our specialist today to share everything with us about all the ins and outs of the interview, the process of it, the value of it, why you should practice. So we have a lot of great stuff to share today. And I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and let her just interview herself. See, this is why we practice. Stacey Harris, introduce herself and share a little bit about what she's doing with military spouse jobs on her side of the organization. And then Melinda will help us with the interview process. And again, my partner in crime, Melinda Rao. And here we go. So welcome everybody. And Kelly, welcome to our Spouse Nation non-podcast show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Kelly Hogan, and I'm a manager now at VetJobs, but I have a long history with being a career specialist, both like for a National Guard program here in Kentucky, and also at VetJobs. And I've helped a lot of military spouse and service members with interviewing, getting all their getting themselves organized, getting prepared, and practicing. So I'm here to just share some of my knowledge and skills in that area.
We're so happy that you're here with us today, Kelly. And I want to just make a couple of notes for those that are watching this little recording or listening to this recording. We are recording this, so this is not live. So we are unable to answer your questions live, but we know that you might have questions. If you do have questions, please drop us a note in our Facebook post where you will see this, or our YouTube post where you will see this posted as well. And we will try and get those questions answered for you as soon as we possibly can. We have an entire plethora of experts with military jobs and vet jobs that their sole passion is to work with our veterans and our spouses to find employment, to find gainful employment. And the first step for many of those that are looking for jobs, those candidates, is preparing for that interview. So Kelly, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of their interview. And I want to talk about it twofold. From the candidate perspective, and then the interview from the perspective. So let's start with the purpose of the interview for the candidates.
And let me just ask, Kelly, are you having a hard time hearing Melinda? Melinda, I think we got your question, but it sounded like you were going in and out a little bit. So I just wanted to.
Okay, then I will ask it again.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
No, we hear you now.
Okay. So let's talk about the purpose of the interview from the perspective of the candidate and from the perspective of the employer. And Kelly, if you would talk a little bit about, first of all, the perspective of the candidate and what the interview will serve as.
Yes. So when you're for the candidate, it's not just about their qualifications and skills. They have to be able to explain what they can bring to the table for that employer. And they have to say, this is what I can offer you. This is who I am, what I've been doing, my experiences, and this is why I want to work for you. And you need to lay those out for the employer.
So basically, it's about self-marketing.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. How many of us are good at that? How many of us are good at that?
But you just practice and you will, I promise.
Okay. That is a key part of that practice piece, is learning to market yourself and what you bring to that particular position and that particular employer. So let's talk about the employer. Why does an employer conduct an interview? Why can't they just look at a resume and say, okay, this is the person we need to hire?
Well, they want to make sure that they want to get to know the person. I mean, if you're going to be working with someone every day, I know employer, that's the main thing is they want to get to know you. They want to see if you can do the job, if you're a good fit for the organization, if you have the skills, if you can articulate those skills to them. That all those are important for getting a job, no matter the industry.
Okay. Now, we have seen some very interesting shifts in the world of employment, especially over the last couple of years. We've had dramatic shifts when it comes. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we gotcha.
Okay, we're seeing some dramatic shifts in the work environment and how people are working. But that's also translating to how people are interviewing. So let's talk about some of the different types of interviews and how we might prepare ourselves for those different types of interviews that are out there. So first of all, those telephone interviews. How many of us have done a telephone interview? I've actually done a telephone interview. It's usually the first step in the hiring process. So tell us a little bit about what might happen during a telephone interview.
Yeah, it's usually pretty much the basic first step. Just to maybe ask a few questions. They may even ask how much you know about the company and the position and why you want to work there. It's usually a little bit more informal, but it's really just to get to know the candidate a little bit better, assess their skills a little bit more until they move forward. And usually a lot of the time, if it's a phone interview or even a digital interview, it's so that the manager can or if it's a recruiter doing it, they can brief the manager later, to see if they want to move forward. So sometimes it's not even with the person that will be hiring you or maybe doing the next interview. Every company is different, but that's why you have to research the company and figure out. And it could be the person. If it's a little bit smaller organization, maybe it is the HR department. They may do it. The manager may call itself and do the whole thing.
So it sounds like it's part of the screening process.
Yes.
Okay, so that moves us into something that is happening more and more now is virtual interviews. And how does that work? And what can we as candidates do to prepare us or to help us stand out in a virtual interview type of environment?
I would prepare like it was an in-person interview, regardless if you are, even if it's virtual, you still need to dress the part. You need to look good, make sure everything is working on your computer, have all the sound checks, and you need to have, just the same, be prepared, have questions to ask the employer, very similar. Treat it like you're.
Do you think that the virtual interview method is going to be going away anytime soon? Or do you think that's kind of our new normal?
I think so. It's a lot easier. Like I said, you can record those. Sometimes they'll have questions and they'll have the candidate record it. And then, like I said, the HR manager or the recruiter can review it later. Not during office hours. Sometimes they'll do it later at the end of the day. So it really opens up the schedule. They don't have to schedule an appointment with you. They can send you a link, have you do it, and then they can assess it later and decide if they want to talk to you in person. It gives more people flexibility, just like we're seeing a lot more work from home positions, and they kind of offer that work-life balance. And using these technology through the interviewing process has helped that in the HR area too, as far as hiring candidates.
Well, I want to ask something. I'm going to interrupt real quick because there's kind of two types then of those virtual interviews. One might be something like this, that you're actually face-to-face having a conversation. And the other one is you have been sent a series of questions that you now need to do yourself and record and submit. Mm-hmm. So people need to be aware of that, that recording is out there. So that to me means you better have a little bit more practice, and also don't send it. You can always delete it and re-record it before you send it. So if you don't, I'm assuming that's how it would work. So, work on that one. That's I know my daughter's been dealing with that a lot lately, but is a whole different level. When you're talking about the virtual, there's two different ways to do that there. So that's neat.
Yeah.
Now, I know that over the last couple of years, we haven't seen a lot of in-person career fairs, but I've actually attended a career fair, and the way that it was promoted to me was you come dressed for success. You come dressed, prepared, that one of the 50 different organizations here that you hand your resume to might be interested in doing an on-the-spot interview. So again, because sometimes in a career fair, there are so many different organizations, how do you prepare for that?
A lot of the events will have the company information, a list of the companies. So the job seeker can figure out and do a little research if there's someone that they want to talk to, if there's a company there that they want to work for. Then you just have to do your homework and prepare a pretty good elevator speech if you get a chance to talk to the recruiter while you're there. And then that's also part of an interview as well. When they say, "Tell me about yourself." Well, that's something that they'll ask you at a career fair for sure.
So how long should an elevator speech be?
I would say at least a minute and a half, not too long. You want to get back to talking to them about the job, but you want to have your thoughts together. And I would say 60 seconds is pretty good.
Okay. And again, I was actually very surprised when I went to this particular career fair that so many of the people I saw walking around at this career fair were dressed in jeans. And they were not dressed prepared for an interview. I went with a button-down blouse, a jacket. I was dressed like I was going to work in a bank. And I had my resume. I had like 15 copies of my resume, and I had notes of the different booths that I was going to stop by. I didn't stop by everybody because I wasn't interested in working for everybody. It was just certain organizations that I was actually interested, but I was prepared for that. And you get literally 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes with each one of those organizations. So it did take some time, and it took a mindset on my part that this was going to be all about me. And I'm not good at that. I'm just not good at that. And so I had to really focus on that 5-minute block of time that I had. And I had to be able to sell myself knowing that there were 10 people standing behind me listening to me. And they were getting ready to sell themselves as well. So it was an interesting experience. It didn't glean a job for me, but it really taught me the importance of that first impression, that first 5 minutes, that handshake that you give when you first meet somebody, whether it's a panel or it's an individual interview, that handshake and the eye contact right there at the very start of the encounter was very important. So
that sounds like a great place to go practice, right?
It was. Okay, now we want to talk about some one-on-one direct interviews, which is probably what some people are most familiar with, but they kind of fall into 3 different categories. And so we're going to talk about this. Now, the one of these I had never done before. It didn't occur to me that this was a method of interviewing for a job. Just having it a very unstructured, conversational type of interview, that is something new to me. So tell me what the difference is between a structured and an unstructured interview.
Well, structured is the most common because that's the easiest way to assess all candidates applying for the position. If they all ask them the same questions and then they can see how they all answer, just easier to evaluate. So most likely that will be how they, if they have an HR department, and that's normally how they offer structured questions. However, you will find that some, especially if I've heard of CEOs sometimes go off the cuff and they'll ask, VP candidate or something, their own questions. And that happens too. So, and they'll ask the candidates all different type of questions depending on, what they're interested in. And you just kind of have to go with the flow on that. And, and you still prepare as much as, because it'll probably, even though it may not be exactly the same question that you prepared for, it might be that you can still have a very similar answer based on your experience, your skills, things that you've already kind of written out of situations that are problems that you've solved, or things like that in your previous positions. So
one of the questions I was asked in this unstructured interview is whether or not I believed in aliens. And I was just okay, what does that have to do with the job? And it was a test question to see what my response was going to be and how quickly I could think on my feet. So,
Yes, there's one behind you right now.
but it was very interesting. It didn't even occur to me that would have been part of an interview. But
Yeah.
I got the job, but it was just interesting. Okay, so and this is when the next type of one-on-one interview is one that I've actually done as well. When I was working as a family readiness officer for the Marine Corps, this was the type of interview that they did in the second round of interviews. And this is a behavioral and competency based. So can you describe about what that might look like?
Yeah, so if it's behavioral, they're going to be looking for situational type questions to see in certain scenarios um, that you've had in the past to see how you acted on them. You know, HR, it's always your past performance predicts your future performance. So they're trying to figure out, if you had a bad customer come in, how did you handle that situation, or any kind of negative or a negative conversation with your boss, how did you handle it, things like that, and they'll see, and you have to base it on that. Now the competency based is a little bit different than that, because it's going to they're going to ask, okay, what's your knowledge of this program, what's your skills on this level, for this company, what do you know about this, and they're really going to assess your knowledge, skills, and abilities for the job. So it's again, easy way to prepare, for both of those. But I think a lot of people like the behavioral, asking those, because they can get an indication of how you're going to really work every day.
Right. Well, and I've discovered also, not just in my research for this particular conversation with you, but just in general, that being able to fit in within the climate of a company or an organization is becoming very, very important to employers. And I know that myself as a candidate, I'm looking for a culture that I feel I can fit into. And so, yes, understanding those behavioral approaches and how you would deal with different situations does give a good picture of how you would fit into the culture of an organization. So then the next type of interview is, because we've already talked about the situational approach a little bit, is the group or panel interviews. And there's two different kinds of group or panel interviews. There's the candidate group, where you would be interviewed with an entire group of candidates. And then there is a panel group where there would be like a hiring panel. And I've actually sat in an interview with a hiring panel, and there were numerous people that were asking questions during that. So tell me what the difference is between the two and why those two approaches are used.
Well, like you, I have not participated in a candidate group, and a candidate group is another screening process for employers to use to see which candidates stand out in a group. And then the panel, which I have participated in, those are most, because I've had government jobs and they all use panels. There's usually 2 or 3 people on the panel, and then they ask questions. Usually it's the same questions to each candidate, but they go through the same questions, and then they score you. And so I feel more like I'm more comfortable now over the years with panels, because I'm used to it now. But the first time I went in there, I, again, practice, because I did not do well or get the job the first time I went in the panel, but I did on the second job. So there is hope.
There is hope. There is hope. So, okay. So we've talked about why the interview is important, both from the candidate perspective and the employer perspective. And we've talked about the different types of interviews. So Stacy's going to talk a little bit about the rest of the process in the interview. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Stacy.
Thank you very much. So the big question, how do we prepare for this interview? What are our top tips? What are the things we want to share? And I think if people were listening, they can probably pull out a lot of the tips, because every question you answered, you've kind of alluded to the training and the research. But let's just break it down a little bit, because I think number one, training, right?
Yeah.
And who offers that free training? Well, we do.
Military spouse jobs.
Yes. And mock interviews, we offer training. Career specialists will work with them on their answers. I mean, we're really one-on-one assistance, and it's better to, I always say, like, do it a few days before to make sure everything's like refreshed in your memory. Don't start preparing a few days before, but practicing saying it out loud a few days before those answers, so you can articulate and say the right words and remember them.
What you
But,
mean?
yeah.
Like instead of saying interview, instead of introduce, things like that. See, we all make the mistakes. So, and a perfect time to stand in front of the mirror too. I mean, it's funny how just kind of watching yourself and how are you sitting and your shoulders back and all that stuff. Training, training, training. And then you talked about this too. So I'm going to throw this out at you. Research. What is it that they're doing? What are they preparing for when they're hitting that research section?
Learn about the company, their mission, the job. Get out the job description that you applied for and read it, and learn it. Make sure you understand the job, the
Which
qualifications. Yes, what
yeah.
you'll be doing.
And if you're
Write down any questions you have on the job you may want to ask them.
I was just going to say, and if you've got a few interviews coming up, make sure you're asking the questions for the right company that you're interviewing for as well. Be prepared. So yes,
They will know when you're not. They
research,
may not
research,
know when
research.
you're over prepared, but
Well,
people know when you're not prepared.
I think the research too is going to help you. The other thing we've talked about is like the climate or the culture. And in your research, you will probably find a lot of those answers ahead of time of what's going on over there at that organization. Another big thing is references. I think I'm assuming that's still a big part of that whole interview and your resume, because a lot of times people are going to ask you about that. So any good tips on preparing that aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I have just a list of references, usually the same ones, and I always just send them an email or text and let them know you're applying or you're having an interview, and that company may be calling and asking, because you don't want them to be caught off guard. Like, wait, what? So you want to give them a heads up. I mean, these are the people that care about you. They're your references, so they'll
Right.
want to do it for you. It's just you need to communicate that your resume is back in circulation. You're looking for another position, and so they can be prepared for those calls or emails when they come through.
Well, I think the flip side to that, because I have been a reference for a lot of people, the flip side of that is if someone's using me as a reference, I need to stay up to date on how they are doing, because I don't want to give a reference to someone who's going to be a dud when I send them in there. So it kind of works both ways, but it is very important. I do like the heads up. It kind of just keeps me on my toes when I get the phone call, but I can tell you I have had many phone calls and I'm looking at my phone going, don't recognize this number. Should I answer it or not? And then the person starts going into this conversation and then they like, I want to just hang up. And then all of a sudden they'll say the person's name. I'm like, must be a reference. I've got this. I can keep going. But if I just got a text message, I might have been a little more They didn't know I wasn't prepared because I kind of just let it go. But it is important to let your references know, hey, like you said, you might get a call, because it's nice to know, especially we screen a lot of calls in this day and age too. You want to know that to be prepared for that call coming in. The last one we have here is my favorite, practice.
Yes.
I think we talk about training and we talk about practice, and my take is that you get your training, but then you need to practice your training. So is that how you look at that kind of component of it?
Yeah, I mean, I most definitely. I think there's actually a few steps that I do to prepare. So I'll do my research. I'll select some questions to that, because there's so many tools out there that you can just Google interview questions. Okay. And I think we're going to have some links for them to view some of my favorite ones that have just many that you can, I mean, really, you could spend days preparing for them. You kind of want to highlight the ones that are, most fitting to the job probably, or that they may be asking, kind of pick out. And then I write them out. I write my answer out on a piece of paper. I know people type, and that's fine. I like to write it out because it makes me recall it faster.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say it out loud and see how it sounds out loud, or I'll do a video on my phone to see how it sounds afterwards. And then not only do I do it for the questions that I anticipate them asking me, I also want to make sure that I prepare at least 5 to 8 questions to ask them. And I say 5 to 8 because you may only get to ask 3 or 5 depending on time.
Right.
Maybe another interview after you, and you'll have to wrap it up. And those questions at the end are usually, for you to ask them. So and throughout the interview, those questions are important to have out maybe like in front of you, because they may answer those questions during the interview.
You don't want to re-ask.
They've already touched on that. It just helps you stay organized during the whole thing, like being interviewed.
So here, now I'm going to throw another question at you. You're at that first stages of the interview. What are questions you don't ask?
Anything about pay.
Okay.
Anything about benefits. They have not offered you the job yet. Do not ask anything about 401k or participate in the interview, like you want the job. Again, you applied for this job.
Right.
Go in there and see if you still want it after meeting with them and figuring out the culture and seeing who they are, if you think that you would be a good fit. Because it has to be mutual on both ends.
Right.
They don't want to hire you and then you just quit. That happens depending on the job, but they really want someone that's going to stay, help their company grow, make some money, benefit them. So you want to make sure that it's, but you want to go in, let them do the flow. You answer the questions, don't talk too much, just answer the question, end it, and then when it's time to ask your questions, you can ask them then. But really don't take over. Let them do and then hopefully you'll get to the next step where it most likely gets a little bit more informal, or if it's a big VP job or something,
right,
a bit more serious and more talking, it gets harder.
Well, and I believe going in, there's a lot of, I think, is it glass window, glass ceiling, glass door, yeah, glass something. My daughter and I were just talking about this again. Practice, Stacy. I can't get the words right. You should probably, going in, at least have some sense of the salary range, because I know a lot of friends that they'll go in and they'll interview for a job, and then they're thinking, they work their way through all these interviews. Then they come out going, I can't work for them. They don't pay enough. And I'm thinking, you invested a lot of time. Did you not even at least have a sense of that range? Because to me, that is an important thing as well. As you're entering this job, is it even within a range of money you're willing to work for? Sometimes it's more. That's even better. But because I just remind people, you should have a sense, that window, that range of what they're going to pay you, but don't ask about that. So I want to make sure we highlighted on that. So
I did want to mention one more thing about practice and how important practice is. More and more positions, especially in some industries, are asking for presentations, or they want you to do a presentation on information on what you're going to be doing. And they define the time limit of that presentation. You have to practice so you stay within that time limit. And that's incredibly important. I've been a trainer for years, and every job that I've applied for has asked me to prepare a presentation, and I have to present it, and I have to present it within a very, very brief period of time. And I will sit there with a stopwatch on my phone, timing myself so that I am respecting the time limit that they have given me. So that's another piece of that practice. And I know that is happening more and more in interviews. They're asking for that from people. So again, practice.
You don't want the music to start playing before you finished your.
You don't want the hook. You don't want the hook. And you don't want your eyes to glaze over, because the candidate is not respecting the instructions that they were given. So again, that's another piece of that practice. And I practice in front of a mirror.
And
just-
I had a candidate that did not get the heads up that was asked in the interview to do an impromptu presentation that was just a few minutes long, and and they had to come up with it. So yeah, I mean, they get creative for sure. And sometimes back to the salary, sometimes in the digital interview, if there's one, or the telephone interview, they may touch on that and kind of get that out of the way, like, and ask a salary range or part of when you're submitting your application. So then if you are saying okay at the beginning after that conversation, then it should still be okay at the end. So, or if it's not, you don't have to go through it. You just say no, thank you. But you will learn something by going through it. Like every interview, I would say never turn down an interview because you will learn something.
Right. But at the end of the day, it is your choice to turn down that job if you don't think it's the right one for you. They can end up offering you the job, and you can say no. There could be a feeling you had, or maybe the hours don't work, or but practice, and every interview you just get better at it. Well, the next section, we're going to kind of just consolidate some of this stuff down, but we did talk about the training and training opportunities. So, and that lots and lots of free training, interview training opportunities that cost you nothing. No reason not to take advantage of those. So make sure you're out there. You're going to look this up and take advantage of the free training. The other thing is the questions for the employer. Be prepared. So we've talked about that, to make sure you have questions to ask the employer. The next thing that I think this is very important is understanding those nonverbal cues. What's going on during the interview? What are you communicating? Any thoughts on that, Kelly? As you're sitting there, don't be the one tapping your leg. Well, I should say it's verbal cues and physical cues. As I look at it, as you're sitting there, and what are you hearing from them, and how are you presenting yourself?
Yeah, I recommend just trying to stay as cool as possible. I mean, again, listen, when you're in the interview, I think you want to talk when it's appropriate, but also listen to what they're saying. They may be telling you something that's like, oh, this isn't going to be a good fit for me. This isn't a great. So, like, have your ears open. Also, of course, we talked about dressing appropriately for the interview. Make sure that you are just more engaging. Act like you want to be there. Pretend make sure you're interesting. And, like I'll nod sometimes, but not overly nod. You want to have some not great nonverbals, but you also, don't want to be like rolling your eyes, or like, maybe like, are you going to stop talking so I can talk? Like, I mean, you want to just be very respectful, and act in good faith, and I think that communicate and yeah, just.
Well, and you talked about dressing. We always talk about dress for success. I think it is very important that whatever your 2 or 3 outfits, or that you can wear, and that they're ready to go at a moment's notice. Because sometimes you get the call, sometimes you might think it's an in-person, it's going to be a virtual, or vice versa. You want to be ready from head to toe. Maybe you've put on 15 pounds and you go grab that jacket or the blouse. You realize you don't want to be heading to the interview and your buttons are popping. So that is another form of preparation and practice. Have it hanging in the closet. Okay, this is my interview outfit. Don't wear it on a Friday night. Keep this set aside and ready to go. Because I've known friends that get that call, and it's, I have to go in for an interview tomorrow morning, and my dresses at the dry cleaners. You always want to be ready, something to wear. And I have a couple of backup options. And
yes, and prepare if it's going to be, the weather, it's rainy, get an umbrella, don't come soaked, or like, and all your documents soaked. I mean, use your head, just kind of just like anything else, just try to, prepare for the worst case scenario.
And the other thing too, because you talk about the weather, and this is an issue around here in the DC area, know where you are going to park your car. because
How far did you walk in?
it is because, and it wasn't for an interview, but it was for an event. And I had given myself plenty of time, I thought, until the parking garage where I had already researched where I was going to park was full or it was closed. We couldn't get in. And now I'm thinking, oh no. And you're driving around, and then you're 7 blocks down and you're running in and you're sweaty and your feet have blisters. And you're thinking, well, I thought I was prepared for this. So parking can possibly be an issue for you if you are going for an in-person interview. And you might not be able to get into the building where you're going for parking because that's happened before as well. You don't have that parking pass to swipe to get in, and there isn't visitor parking so be prepared. Those are the things to think about is get there early. It is better to be there early and to be waiting 15 minutes in a air-conditioned little front area, reception area, than be rushing in. No one wants to see you rushing and screaming through the door. So
one thing that I have done in preparing for an interview is when I have gotten the call to schedule the interview, and it's usually done by an executive assistant, I will ask them some questions. So for example, how long is the interview block? Are there interviews after me? Where would I park? How am I going to access the building? Is there a phone number that I need to call? I will ask those questions of the person who is scheduling the interview. And I usually get a lot of good information from that person. And that has really helped me in prepare my time, how much time I need to give myself to get there, and I'll GPS where I'm parking, all of those pieces.
Isn't that nice that we have
those questions?
We didn't have GPS a while ago.
Nope. But don't be afraid to ask that scheduler those questions. That's the time to ask those questions because, again, you're conveying something about yourself. Also, I wanted to ask Kelly, when you walk in and you see that you've got a panel of people in front of you and you're interviewing, what's the first thing you do? I know what I do. I walk in, I say, good afternoon or good morning, and I shake hands with everybody there, and then I take a seat and I'm ready to go. So is that the best way to approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. A lot of times the person that's coming, like, the manager or the person hiring, and they'll introduce you, but it's always so nice. And I always ask to for business cards at that time, like, do you have a business card? So you can send them an email after to thank them for their time, regardless if whatever happened at the interview. It's always good to say thank you within 24 hours, definitely an email. So
that's what I was just going to ask you.
Too, but now I used to send handwritten, but now I do just email because it's so quick and so.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you was the thank you note, and is email is the appropriate way? That's what I would assume now in this day and age, that an email is the appropriate way to thank that person for the interview and their time.
Right. I think the other reason that I do the handshake is because I feel like I'm conveying some confidence in myself that I am here. I am prepared for this interview. I'm ready for any of the questions that they have for me. And I think self-confidence is an incredibly important part of this process so that they understand that you do know what your qualifications are, that you know what your skills are, that you've practiced, you've prepared, and you're ready. So that's another best practice that I think is important for our candidates to remember. Training, research, references are all part of that self-confidence, is walking in knowing that you're prepared to take this job.
Yeah. Or fake it till you make it.
Yeah, you want to be as professional as possible, to shake hands, you just want to conduct yourself accordingly for sure. And they'll remember that.
Absolutely. And finally, I think being yourself. And that's another part of that research process is when you go onto the website of any organization or company, there's almost always a mission statement or a description of how they started, about us, that type of thing. And you can look at the different company officers and the roles, where they've come from, and you can get a really good feel for the culture of that company or that organization. Even government organizations provide that information. So again, don't try to fit yourself into a mold. Be yourself. And if you don't think you're going to fit, that's all part of it as well.
So don't give up. Don't give up. Just keep
Well,
going.
right, and it's like it's still like if it's meant to be, it's going to be. Like in the end of the day, if you're meant to be there, it's also a little bit of faith too. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you're doing all the right things. You're qualified. You want that job, and even if it doesn't go well, they may think of you for another job. They still may want you. So have good faith. Like be as kind, and hopefully maybe your name will pop back up and say, hey, we don't select you for this position, but we're going to have some more openings. Please apply. Well, hey, apply, when they come out and try again, because it may work out. So it's very competitive out there, but there's a lot of opportunity. So,
and with that being said, I want to share, we said, don't give up. You may have 50 rejections. Honestly, I have my daughter, my friends, it's amazing. You're going to interview and you just wonder, why am I not getting the job? Why am I not getting the job? Just don't lose heart, because, and I don't know that this is talked about, but I'm going to put it out there and you can share your thought on it. A lot of times you end up interviewing for a job, and I think the company already knows who they're going to put in that position, and you get your hopes up, right? And you get all excited about this job, and it is the perfect fit for you. But they can't just hire internally. They have to put these jobs out there. And I think that people and our candidates have to be aware that don't take it personally. Unless you've really done something crazy or, rude, don't take it personally if you didn't get the job. These people don't necessarily know you personally. Just keep going, because the right job is out there for you and you will get it. But if you think you're alone in this, you are not.
Nope.
You are not. But every interview is a practice, and keep going, keep practicing, have other people look at your resume. Maybe you're missing something. I don't know, reach out to people and find out, hey, was there something I was missing? I don't know. What were you guys looking for this job? I just think I don't want our candidates to be feeling down about not getting that job. Just keep going, because everybody is experiencing that out there. And but the right job will come along, and you just never give up and you keep going.
I will add at the end of the interview, if there's a question, it's like, well, is there anything else? And if they ask you if you want to add anything else, always add to it. Clear up anything that you may have missed. Or did it, at that, or you misstepped on a question, or you forgot to add something to the question. You could go back you could add it on, you could clear anything up. And then, just at that time, just again, reiterate why you're there. Like, tell them why you want the job.
Right.
Tell them why you would be a good fit for them. And leave them on that positive note of you, not just like, oh, it's okay, well, we're done with asking the question. See you later. Like, wait a minute, I mean, you can still leave them with, a positive, and they'll remember you too. So just if you get that opportunity, I always say yes. Cause I remember an interview, and I actually did get the job, and it was like, well, do you have anything else to add? Well, I didn't know one of the questions, the exact number. And I was like, well, I felt like, even though I didn't know that exact right answer, I still would be a great fit. And I listed the reasons why I would be, and not knowing that was very small, and I did get the job. So, I mean, there's always reasonable thing, but it's good to address that, just highlight your skills one more time.
Yes. So what do we've got? Preparation, practice, and placement. Those are our three P's for today, our 3 keywords. And again, you can find lots of information on Spouse Nation, which our famous logo is keeping you employment ready until you're ready for employment. And part of that, even if you don't think you are going to be looking for a job in the next year, it doesn't hurt to practice and stay on top of all these current interviews, skills that you need, and interview types that are out there. So you've got some time. Come on board and take a look. Any final words, ladies?
I just want to close out by saying that we have some great training available through militaryspouseJobs.org under the training tab and spousenation.org. And you can avail yourself of of those training opportunities at any time. We, as the purveyors of that information and that training, we have taken care to find the subject matter experts and get the information and resources together for you so that you can just log into the training whenever you are able to, and make sure that you're employment ready. Build your package, take your resume, dust it off, and look at it every 6 months or a year. I still do, and I've been employed for the last, I don't know how many years.
3.
I still take my resume out and take a look at it, refresh my references, and make sure the information is current and correct. And then the training opportunities are available anytime you would like them.
Yeah.
Kelly has provided some amazing links that we are going to include in notes when we do release this, so that you have that information as well. Now, I want to turn it back over to Kelly to close us out and give us any final words of wisdom. And then we will end this recording and we will post it on our Facebook page. And I just want to say at this point, thank you, Kelly, for your time today. So you're going to close us out.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation, and I hope everyone has gotten a little something from it that's listening. And if I can be of help in any way, please reach out to me directly. They can share my email address. I am a firm believer in, building your network and, getting more people to be a tool in your toolbox, and, career specialists at VetJobs. And, my team, we're happy to help in any way we can help get you that job. So thank you so much. And thank you for your service. And I look forward to hopefully doing another one of these again, maybe.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We got your number.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.